We begin with a Fox News alert. President Trump has taken executive action on health care. Moments ago, the president signed an executive order to improve access, increase choices, and lower costs of health care. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, Sandra Smith, host of Kennedy of Fox Business, Kennedy herself, Republican strategist and Fox News contributor Lisa Booth, today's hashtag One Lucky Guy, Fox News political analyst and co-host of The Five, Juan Williams is here. He's outnumbered. Good to have you.
Nice to be here.
And he's always in a good mood.
One in a million.
Let me tell you, I'm in a great mood today. I'm going to tell you why. I'm a baseball guy, and my baseball team did so well last night, and we're going to win the NL tonight.
That's a nice counterbalance to the fact that
I didn't know you were a Yankees fan. That's fantastic.
No. Washington Nationals, go Nats, go.
I would have thought you were sad.
Thank you,
yeah,
Lisa.
Go Nats.
I would have thought you were sad as Obama's health care landmark legislation is getting wiped away a bit today. I would have thought, but we'll talk about it.
No, that was sad. That's unbelievable to me.
A little balance in your life there with the baseball.
Okay.
All right, President Trump putting his own stamp on health care today. The president just signed an executive order aiming to make lower cost plans more widely available to Americans. He said just this week he would use the power of the pen after Congress failed to repeal Obamacare.
This will cost the United States government virtually nothing, and people will have great health care. And when I say people, I mean by the millions and millions.
The order seeks to expand access to association health plans, which the House has already okayed. People can band together to buy those plans, perhaps across state lines. It directs the Treasury, Labor, and HHS departments to consider expanding coverage through low-cost short-term health insurance plans, as well as to consider changes to health reimbursement arrangements, those employer-funded savings accounts for health care expenses like your deductibles and co-payments. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi was asked about the president's executive action earlier today. Here's what she said.
I don't know what he's putting out today, but I do know it is a sabotage of the Affordable Care Act and, quite frankly, a real disservice to the American people. The president, I think, not having seen what he has to say, but just judging from what he has said, knows very little about health care legislation.
Well, now we have seen what he has to say. Juan, as I was saying, you were so excited about baseball. I figured you might not be as excited about the fact that landmark legislation by former President Obama has a divot in it now, and it's signed by President Trump.
All right, this is a golf. Good job.
You had a sports team.
Wow.
No, I don't even play golf. Let's just get that straight. Anyway.
Well, no, I mean, this is a serious thing because it is so hypocritical that I don't even know where to start. I mean, he's the one who was complaining about President Obama taking executive actions. Here he is doing that. Secondly, here he is, and just to reiterate what Nancy Pelosi said, sabotaging Obamacare. But you know what? If you want to play politics and he's the president, he has every right. But we have a better plan that insures more people, that lowers costs for Americans, that protects them as consumers of health care.
No, he does not.
No, and Harris, I think that is the problem. He doesn't think that. He just thinks that he can claim a political victory, and it's all about him.
So you have a better plan.
I like
the
you.
Democrats have a better plan.
I like you, and I think you're a good person.
Well, you're kind.
It's not personal,
but it's not. It is not
hearing
personal.
anything
wearing a
but
tie that matches your dress.
Completely, and thank you for that. You are completely off base here.
Go right ahead.
Nancy Pelosi is such a hypocrite when she talks about, oh no, I don't know what's in it, but the president is sabotaging Obamacare. Obamacare sabotaged health care and insurance in this country.
Oh, yeah.
It sucker punched
Let me
people
just say,
by
if that's
forcing
true,
them to pay for insurance for sick people. That's what the
and so here's what.
Forcing healthy people to buy plans they don't want and don't need.
Here's
to
the
pay
concept,
for sick
Kennedy.
people.
Here's the concept. You have a risk pool, and everybody jumps in the pool.
You can call it whatever you want.
I'm just explaining the concept. Okay, so here's the Ponzi scheme then deconstructed for you. Right now, people who buy in will discover that they don't have protections, that if they actually get sick, their costs will go up and they will be devastated.
No, you're forcing men to buy maternity care.
Oh, ridiculous.
Oh, goodness. Lisa, please jump in. The water is warm.
No, but Juan, I also love you, but there is a big but here as well.
Go right
just
ahead.
like Kennedy preface. No, but
I'm just so sick and tired of hearing things like this from Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Party, including yourself, my friend, because the reality is there's so much criticism. You want to criticize and poo-poo everything that Republicans have been trying to do or what they've offered. But what solutions has the Democrat Party offered to fix what they broke from the beginning?
I think you have a legitimate, you have a point, but here's the thing. Remember, you had 60-plus votes by Republicans to repeal Obamacare. Then you had the opportunity over the course of the Trump presidency with a Republican majority in the House and Senate to find a replacement plan, Lisa. And was there a replacement plan that was better?
Because I missed the sound of Sandra's voice. And I want to hear about the Dow, because there's got to be some reaction.
Do I need to yell over everybody?
No.
Yeah, I mean, you were asking me about the Dow, and the Dow is hitting a record high as we speak. Obviously, a lot playing into that. Paul Ryan just said we're going to stay over Christmas if we have to get tax reform done. But looking at healthcare right now, can you concede, Juan, to be very polite, can you concede at least that this is a good starting point?
No, because if you wanted a starting point, you'd say, let's negotiate. Let's begin to work across party lines in the spirit of the American people and deliver the best possible, because there are shortcomings, without a doubt, to Obamacare. And I think my colleagues here will say, here's the problem, here's this problem, here's that problem.
I don't know about your colleague on the end of the couch.
Yes, you would say, you say that's problematic. You don't like parts of Obamacare.
Well, absolutely.
So
that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. So let's work and make it better for the American people.
I thought it was a trick question.
And
obviously they don't like it.
Well, and most Americans are feeling it, because we see in 2018, 50% of counties are projected to only have one insurer option, right? So you're looking at between 2013, 2017, insurance premiums have doubled. But the problem, Juan, is there's been a lot of lip service from the Democratic Party. There's been a lot of criticism from the Democratic Party, but there has been no solutions offered or any real desire to actually work with Republicans to accomplish anything.
All they can say is that with this, and by the way, I agree with you. I'm not a fan of executive order, because one president can give it, the next can take it away. And that is an incredibly cruel thing to do.
It's very autocratic. I don't like it.
Healthcare, I don't like that. Right. But I do resent the fact that Democrats are resentful of people wanting their own choices in healthcare. Let them buy health care across state lines, insurance plans.
You must feel this way about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, but I'm going to tell you something. We as an American people need quality, affordable health care. All I'm saying is let's work together.
One last point before we move on, because you talk about executive orders. Remember that President Obama could so not get things done, even when his party was in the majority and both sides of Congress, that he used 45 times plus executive action
well, that's fine. He passed Obamacare.
His own legislation.
He passed Obamacare, and guess what? Wasn't Trump the one that complained about it?
Oh, I am so glad you're here.
What hypocrisy.
Thanks for being on the couch. President Trump is also taking his tax plan on the road to Battleground, Pennsylvania, telling an audience of truckers it will be a boon for their industry, driving home the message that tax reform will benefit the middle class and not the wealthy. Here it is. Watch.
We need a tax system that is fair to working families and that encourages companies to stay in America, grow in America, spend in America, and hire in America. Throughout the year, my administration has worked closely with Congress to develop a framework for tax reform that will deliver exactly that. More jobs, higher pay, and lower taxes for middle-income families and for American businesses of all size.
And there's a line forming. Democrats are already lining up against tax reform even before the bill is written. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, there she is again, calling it nothing but a one-way tax break for the wealthy.
The Ryan McConnell tax cut framework, it's not tax reform, it's tax framework, raises taxes on the middle class, slashes taxes on the wealthiest 1%, and explodes the deficit.
Republicans are calling out Democrats as obstructionists. The RNC released a statement which says, quote, Democrats have become so beholden to the far left factions of their party that it's become their knee-jerk reaction to obstruct any Republican policies, no matter how straightforward they may be. Putting this type of blind partisanship ahead of the needs of families and business owners who are suffering under our nation's tax burden is irresponsible and unacceptable. You had Mitch McConnell saying, look, before you guys liked tax reform. Now you guys don't like tax reform and you want to go after the president.
Well, if it was tax reform, I think Democrats would like it. I think the American people would like it. But this isn't tax reform. This is a tax cut. And the tax cut disproportionately benefits upper-income Americans. And also, and I think this is the problem within the Republican Party.
You'll have to work those numbers out with me after the show, because I'm not sure where you're getting those.
Okay, I'll explain to you.
Nancy Pelosi just said all we have is a framework. So where are you getting those details?
Because Steve Mnuchin has laid out the basic plan that basically says here are the tax brackets and how they'll be reduced.
They've compressed the tax brackets. Yes, they have compressed them.
You asked where I got this from, so I was answering.
That doesn't necessarily mean that this is a big tax cut for the wealthy.
Yes, it is. Because it's no question that it disproportionately benefits the upper income, and not only upper income, the 1%. But let me just say, the bigger problem is among Republicans, not Democrats. Republicans have the votes. But they don't at the moment because it explodes the deficit. And remember, Republicans said we can't have that.
Let me get this in.
But remember, this was what Republicans complained about.
When we talk over each other.
The founder of the Freedom Caucus, which has been the sticky wicket in the Republican Party, particularly the House, obviously, Jim Jordan joined me yesterday, and he said, no, you're wrong about that. They do think they have the votes. And even a holdout like a Rand Paul may come over if they can convince him, but they also think they might be able to bring on board a couple of Democrats, and here's why. They haven't put out those income levels yet, but the average household will benefit by more than $4,000. So now we just need to know who that is.
You can't just not acknowledge that there are Republicans who are concerned about possible negotiations happening at the corporate tax rate, Lisa.
Right.
You can't say that there is not concern from Republicans in Congress right now that the president might go to 22, 23%.
No, it's true.
And all of a sudden, it's not the plan that he originally promised. Remember, he started at 15%.
Sure.
Said, well, I was open to negotiation. He went to 20.
But at least they'll negotiate and possibly get somewhere.
But if that slips further, that's going to be a problem.
But I think you sort of hit the nail on the head where you said we just have a framework, right? And the Wall Street Journal editorial board is really critical of the Tax Policy Center, basically saying they're clairvoyant, because they're making all these partisan assumptions off of a 9-page framework. So I think we truly don't know at this point.
So give us some more details.
There's a lot of assumptions being made everywhere, right? We truly don't know what is going to happen with the nuance of this. Tax policy is complicated. So when this becomes hundreds of pages of legislation, we don't know where everyone's going to be on the issue. So right now, it's really just too early to tell where people are going to come down on this.
Congressman Jordan said they need those income levels. They need more information. Exactly what you're saying. But from what he's seen so far, he's optimistic.
All right, we'll move on. Give Kennedy her money.
I would love.
We all want money. What's wrong with money?
Amen.
Girl needs a new pair of shoes.
Make it rain.
No, she does not.
These things aren't going to buy
She's got so many shoes she can't wear them all. All right. President Trump's battle with the media now escalating after the president tweeted the idea of taking away licenses from networks. So did that go too far? Is the First Amendment at risk? That's what critics are saying. And is the bias at some of those news outlets simply out of control? We'll talk about it. And disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein is now speaking out as more women accused him of sexual misconduct. Now Democrats are also speaking out, including Hillary Clinton. She's saying more.
I was just sick. I was shocked. I was appalled. This behavior that he engaged in cannot be tolerated.
A Fox News alert. Harvey Weinstein speaking out for the very first time, saying he needs help and, quote, we all make mistakes, as more women say he abused or harassed them. Weinstein's now reportedly off to rehab in Arizona after TMZ reported yesterday that his daughter called 911 after some sort of altercation.
I'm not doing okay.
You're not?
I'm trying. I got to get help, guys. You know what? We all make mistakes. Second chance, I hope.
Chief correspondent Jonathan Hunt live in Los Angeles with the latest. Jonathan.
Sandra, after that outburst of what appeared to be alternately contrition, begging and defiance, we now believe that Harvey Weinstein is either in or preparing to enter a rehab facility. Our Phoenix affiliate, KSAZ, caught these pictures last night of a private plane believed to be carrying Weinstein landing in Arizona, and a man who resembled Weinstein in shape and size, at least, getting off the jet and into a black Cadillac Cadillac Escalade. Earlier, Weinstein had been involved in that sort of argument at his daughter's house here in L.A., to which the police were called. The incident caught on camera by TMZ. They spoke briefly to Weinstein, as you heard, with Weinstein pivoting from admitting he is struggling to using some very choice language to rail against those whom he apparently considers disloyal. And as more and more women come forward to say they were harassed, assaulted or raped by Weinstein, there's a growing feeling here in Hollywood that this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of abuse of women. Stars like Annette Bening are saying enough is enough.
It's an important moment and maybe a turning point. I hope it's a tipping point. The fact that all these women have been brave enough to come out and speak, I respect enormously, and I am glad that they're getting a lot of support.
And with the NYPD now asking other alleged victims of Weinstein to come forward, the movie mogul is preparing for potential criminal charges by adding lawyers to his team, while the company he founded with his brother Bob issued a statement saying essentially they knew nothing. Quote, "The Weinstein Company's Board of Representatives are shocked and dismayed by the recently emerged allegations of extreme sexual misconduct and sexual assault by Harvey Weinstein. These alleged actions are antithetical to human decency. These allegations come as an utter surprise to the board." That claim of utter surprise somewhat contradicted by the reporting of the New York Times, which broke the original story, of course. They are now saying, Sandra, that the Weinstein Company was aware of settlements being made by Harvey Weinstein with women at least as far back as 2015. Sandra?
Jonathan Hunt, thank you. And the Weinstein scandal rocking the Democratic Party is he was a major fundraiser and a very generous donor. More and more lawmakers are dumping that money. And the Democratic National Committee saying it will give more than $30,000 from Weinstein to activist groups promoting women's causes. 30 million, I'm sorry. Is that three? What was the amount? 30,000 is the amount. Emily's List and the DCCC, the fundraising arm for House campaigns, will donate funds from Weinstein to various women's charities. Now, Hillary Clinton criticized for waiting about 5 days to denounce Weinstein speaking out on CNN. She will also shed any money from the movie mogul, she says.
Well, there's no one to give it back to. What other people are saying, what my former colleagues are saying, is they're going to donate it to charity. And of course I will do that. I give 10% of my income to charity every year. This will be part of that. There's no doubt about it.
What? Okay. So one, a lot of people taking issue with that. First of all, it was interesting she didn't have a prepared response as to what she was going to do with the campaign funds that she received. So many of her colleagues already said, we're giving to this charity, this charity. She says, well, I heard my colleagues are doing it. What's she going to do with the money?
I don't know. I mean, it's a puzzle to me. I mean, to me, the interesting political dynamic is here. He was a big donor. I mean, there's just no question. He's one of the major Democratic Party donors.
Look at that wall one. We'll grab it in just a second. That's just some of the money.
Right. And so what you get is people who, you know.
But those have been returned.
Yes, they've been returned. But my point is that people who feel somewhat in debt to Harvey Weinstein and have felt this way in much the way that I think people in Hollywood see him as a power broker that you didn't want to cross, as people in the American media, at the height of American media, I think were reluctant to go after this story for the very same reason. So to me, it's like, you know, an ongoing cancer in our society, and one that we have been slow to come to. I'm somewhat amused that people on the Republican side are so delighting in this as if it's, you know,
No. These are very serious allegations you're talking about.
Well, I think so.
And I think came forward in the New Yorker who are accusing him of rape.
No, that's why I said, but I think there's a lot of...
It's incredibly serious. It's not just a lurid gossip story.
No,
he could be facing prison time if he's convicted of any of these.
But my point to you is that there are lots of people who I think are engaging in a certain degree of, you know, what I would call schadenfreude, which is to say, oh, I delight in your misery. And look at you Democrats. You guys are always holding people to a higher moral standard, and now you've got this guy. But you know what, to me, how you deal with Donald Trump and what the vulgar things he has said about women and the record of his women, I don't know.
Well, you really think there's an equivalency between someone who's accused of rape and someone who has said
I think abuse of women in terms of power over women and trying to dominate.
There's no difference between saying something vulgar and raping someone.
I think
you don't see a difference.
Of course, there's a difference between rape and abuse, but there's no getting away from the political damage and damage to women's careers and lives.
It's disgusting to say that anyone delights in any woman anywhere having to go through this. So that is completely uncalled for. What Republicans are pointing out is the complete hypocrisy in pointing out that all these people are complete and utter frauds. You have Hillary Clinton, who said that every sexual assault survivor deserves to be heard, deserves to believe. Took 5 days to say anything about this. You have people like Jimmy Kimmel going out there and making passionate speeches about issues like healthcare. Where's one about this?
Crickets.
He has been silent. Crickets. You've got people like NBC, who along with ABC and CBS spent in 1 week's time 4 hours and 13 minutes about alleged sexual harassment allegations against President Trump, canned a story on this knowing full well what was going on because it was brought to their attention. So what people are simply pointing out is the fact that all of these individuals are complete frauds.
Well, you know what? I remember the late night comics going after Bill Clinton and his history of sexual misbehavior.
Where are they now, Juan?
I'm just telling you, I don't see it in the way that you do, because they went after Clinton, they went after Bill Cosby.
Well, many of them are no longer working in the business because that's been a minute. And, you know, I would just say this, SNL, when you look at NBC, you can Google this for yourself. I mean, they were making skits and jokes about this. That there was a Harvey Weinstein situation that you might, oh, thank goodness, this person, look at the award shows, Google it. Oh, this person doesn't have to fake like she likes Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, that was Seth MacFarlane in 2015.
This is part of the infrastructure of Hollywood covering up for a man to do these things.
Horrific.
And it's horrible. So I hear what you're saying. I know you're a supporter of Hillary Clinton, but this was the woman who ran for president and had a women's card. She's supposed to stand up and say it as eloquently as you put it. She didn't. She still hasn't.
All right, we'll leave it there. President Trump stepping up his battle with the media, why he is threatening to yank TV licenses for what he calls lies. Plus, the fire chief saying it will get worse before it gets better. The latest on the wildfires shaping up to be the worst in California's history as more evacuations are ordered.
Life is what it's about right now, so evacuations are still going on. We have 300 law enforcement officers working right now in this county, and they're from all over the state, so a lot of resources poured in to do that.
Fox News alert now. It is a desperate situation in California's Napa and Sonoma counties, wine country, iconic. Now at least 23 people are dead, with hundreds more missing, as some of the worst wildfires in California history are showing no signs of slowing down. More than a dozen large fires across Northern California. 170,000 acres scorched. And at least 3,500 homes and businesses flattened, burned to the ground. Entire neighborhoods reduced to ash. Chief warns it will get worse before it gets better. Will Carr joins us now live from the devastated Coffee Park neighborhood in Santa Rosa, California. Will?
Harris, one resident described this fire as hell on earth, and the result is a wasteland. You can see that cars are charred. This one flipped upside down by an explosion. As you walk through this neighborhood, we're not just talking about a couple of homes here. I want to show you the extent. This goes through this entire community. Every home leveled, damaged, destroyed. Up to 4,500 businesses and homes now simply gone. This is a normal neighborhood last weekend. There were families and kids playing out in this neighborhood. There were mass evacuations now. Some of the residents have managed to come back in, and they've simply broken down when they've seen this. Others, we've learned, are actually firefighters who are out on the front lines right now. They live in these communities, and they've lost their homes as well. And today, looking forward, it's another red flag day. That's not good for those firefighters on the front lines, but things are supposed to get even worse. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the winds are supposed to pick up over the weekend, so we're keeping a close eye out on that. And for people who are not in the direct path of this fire, there's still very bad smoke throughout the area. People having to put these masks on, Harris, as they're going about their normal days here in Northern California.
And I was reading, too, some of the local purveyors are running out of those masks. Will Carr will pray for those people, especially the first responders who are losing everything themselves, yet still helping others, as you tell us about it. Thank you, Will.
You bet.
The president's battle with the media heating up in a big way after NBC reported that Mr. Trump wanted to boost America's nuclear arsenal almost tenfold. Now he's shooting that down, denying it as a fake news story.
It's frankly disgusting the way the press is able to write whatever they want to write, and people should look into it. The press should speak more honestly. I mean, I've seen tremendously dishonest press. It's not even a question of distortion. When they make up stories like that, that's just made up.
The president also tweeted, network news has become so partisan, distorted, and fake that licenses must be challenged and, if appropriate, revoked. Not fair to the public. Democrats see Mr. Trump's tweet and comments as an attack on free speech and freedom of the press. Here's Senator Chris Coons of Delaware.
The president is popping off on Twitter in a way that is normalizing unconstitutional statements. First, just to be clear, as you said, the president can't pull a license for NBC, but the idea that the president would repeatedly engage in public statements that are just obviously undermining the First Amendment is an alarming development. We all have to stand up in common, those of us who are elected, those of us who are in the media, those of us who care about our constitutional values and civil society, and push back on this. This is not normal behavior, and it's not acceptable.
All right, so, Juan, you've worked in the media for a long time and documented several administrations. All presidents complain that they are not portrayed fairly in the press.
They sure
All
do.
of them, regardless of party. Did this president cross the line for you?
Well, it crosses the line when he talks about pulling somebody's license, because then that suggests that he's the determinant of what's legitimate and illegitimate in terms of press. And, you know, I work at Fox, and I remember when the Obama administration was highly critical, you know, trying to push us out of press pools and the like, and people had to push back there. But that's nowhere near the idea that, oh, you're not allowed to go on the air. That's threatening to people and to our First Amendment rights.
Don't get away from the problem here. There are fake news stories every single day that are put out there. The president's acknowledging that this is a problem. It's a growing problem. Are you not acknowledging the biased nature of the mainstream media?
I think I'm not sure how to quantify it, Sandra, but I would think if you're saying most journalists are liberals, I'd say yes. If you'd say, is NBC more liberal than Fox? Yes. Would I say Fox is more conservative than MSNBC or CNN? Yes. So it's all over. But the idea that I'm objecting to is that he shouldn't be the one deciding what goes out across the air and what you and I see, read, or watch. That's not his business. And the idea, by the way, is that he's complaining not only about the story from NBC on the nuclear arsenal, but the idea of chaos in the White House. And he doesn't like it. Reports that his chief of staff was going to leave or be fired. He doesn't like it. And yet you could see this from multiple sources, and it makes me think,
well, I don't have a problem with him saying that he doesn't like it. I don't have a problem with him pushing back and saying this is clearly objectively unfair. That's fine. But saying somehow he's going to use the power of the federal government to even imply that
anything the government can do?
Yeah, the FCC can do it.
The FCC can only do it with local stations. NBC does not have an FCC license. NBC affiliates have FCC license, and individuals who watch those stations can file complaints to the FCC.
Well, not
the
only
FCC
that,
can fine them, but it would be a very drastic measure.
If you change the licensing for the local affiliates and the network can't put its programming on that because of the changes in the licensing, you can effectively hurt the networks. But what the president is saying here is his opinion in this sense. The problem is he's got the bully pulpit. And so then you wonder, well, does the agency, the FCC, listen to him? Are they going to take a closer look? And, oh, by the way, that wouldn't be the worst thing if they took a closer look at some of the fake news out there. That wouldn't be the worst thing.
Well, no, do you really want the government determining
taking a look at whether
content?
Something is factual? That's what the FCC does. Those are the people who come up with one saying no.
And in all honesty, this is bluster. I mean, how many times have we heard President Trump say things like that? He's not going, you know, we're going to stop doing the daily briefings. So-and-so is not going to be allowed to come to the White House.
They did turn the camera off the briefings for a
short period of time.
We saw the wall for weeks.
So I really, in all honesty, think this is bluster. I don't agree with it. I'm with you on that. I don't like this from
Ben Sass is taking issue with the
and I don't like this from the the president. But there is fake news. I mean, that's undeniable. Someone who's worked in Republican politics, especially in the communication side, I have dealt with this on the campaign trail, working for members of Congress. It is so evident. But I honestly, he should just give them enough room to hang themselves, because that's what they're doing. And every time they have a fake news article,
they had done this week
their credibility.
with the Harvey Weinstein story. NBC had very much damaged their brand by not running with Ronan Farrow's piece. Ronan Farrow,
sorry. The free market.
NBC was having a bad week, and by portraying NBC like this, it actually makes them look like
I just worry when I think back to Richard Nixon going after Katharine Graham at the Washington Post, and what Richard Nixon tried to do was pull those local affiliate licenses.
Yeah, well, that's the only thing the FCC can do, because they can't get their hands on cable in terms of equal time and those sorts of things with issues.
That's the issue, by the way, not the fake news. It's the equal time issues that FCC decides.
Yeah, and that was something that President Obama was also discussing. He's not our president anymore. So what happens now with the Iran deal?
And Juan is quite sad about that.
Why President Trump says it's the most incompetent deal he's ever seen, and what he may do about it as soon as tomorrow. It's coming up. Outnumbered continues in moments.
Woohoo!
He calls it, quote, incompletely drawn. President Trump's decision on the Iran nuclear deal expected to come tomorrow, with all signs pointing to him not recertifying the landmark agreement. The president, who has signaled he wants changes, told Sean Hannity that the United States got nothing in the deal, and he sees it as one of the worst ones ever. Watch.
I think it was one of the most incompetently drawn deals I've ever seen. $150 billion. We got nothing. We got nothing. They got a path to nuclear weapons very quickly. And think of this one, $1.7 billion in cash. This is cash out of your pocket. What? You know how many airplane loads that must be? Did you ever see $1 million like a promotion where they have $1 million in $100 bills? It's a lot. So this is the worst deal. We got nothing. We got nothing.
But Iran is firing back, saying renegotiations is not an option. Juan, I'm going to go to you first. With this, so we've had the French president in agreement potentially about ending sunset provisions, something that Secretary Tillerson has addressed as well. We know that people have been critical of the IAEA not being able to inspect military sites. So is it the worst thing to kick this to Congress and maybe have some deeper conversations about some of these things?
Well, I think that he can kick it to Congress, but what we're hearing from the Congress, including from Republicans, Lisa, is they don't want him to end the deal. The question is, if the Congress somehow was to flub it or say we're going to reimpose sanctions, then what happens on the other end? And that's why you see that most of the countries involved in this deal say they don't see any need to end the deal, that they, in fact, have recertified, and in fact, President Trump recertified twice, that Iran was not in violation of any tenets of the established deal.
Well, and Kennedy, and the expectation is that he's not going to recertify the deal. So what do you think happens in Congress during that window of time?
Well, it's very interesting because, Congress has been saying that their power has been undermined for so long, and you had so many very vocal members from both parties, including Chuck Schumer, who hated the deal. These are allies with big supporters of Israel, and they felt like that deal was a slap in the face to the people of Israel. But now it's interesting because it's almost like Obamacare. You can't unring the bell, and that's how these deals were designed. Unfortunately, they're both really bad deals, but President Obama was brilliant, and he structured them in a way that it makes it almost impossible to extricate the country from.
Sandra, talk about the financial aspect of this. So we know that Iran has essentially been injected with a lot of capital from this deal, and they've used it to destabilize the region. We know that President Trump has tried to address that with trying to, unite the Arab states, which we saw with his visit to Saudi Arabia. How important do you think it is to look at Iran outside of just the context of the nuclear aspect of this, of the destabilization aspect and what they're doing within that region?
But I think it goes back to what we have heard from President Trump time and time again, and he said this on the campaign trail. They are not operating and acting within the spirit of this deal. So as as president now, with more information than he ever has as a candidate, with all of that, he has an obligation to respond if they're not acting within the spirit of the deal. So to Kennedy's point, or Lisa, I'm sorry, whichever he made it, why not kick it to Congress and deal with this in a bigger way?
Because you open the door then to what you saw was the response from the Iranians, which is to say, oh, we're not renegotiating, and if this deal is done, we are going to get back to developing nuclear weapons, which is really not in Israel's interest, but it's not in the interest of the entire Middle East, which is why today you see Israeli leaders coming out and saying, oh, we don't want you to pull out of the deal.
Weigh in real quick?
I was just going to say, I just would like maybe a list of things that when you kick it to Congress and you give them 60 days, what they've been able to accomplish here recently. And that's just reality. This is something that has to be dealt with. And you can understand why the president would want to decertify so he doesn't have to keep doing it every 90 days. Ed Royce, the chairman of the House Foreign Relations Committee, said yesterday, enforce, quote, the hell out of it. Condi Rice, former Secretary of State, has said on this network, keep it and fix it.
Right.
So there you go.
Well, on to another battle. Is a line being drawn over the wall? President Trump supports a deal to protect Dreamers, but Democrats are calling his immigration wish list pure trash. Can they reach a deal? Stay tuned.
And he's round. Those are the